Hey, how's it going? Welcome to today's show. We're going to be focused directly on one of the most important pillars of next level UX, and it's all about design clarity. What's that problem or that friction you have with your team every week? It probably isn't a talent issue, it's probably an alignment issue. What we'll do today is we'll learn the building blocks and the fundamentals of how to set you up for success for any project that you're creating, any daily, weekly, or monthly initiative that you're trying to kick off. We want to be able to set you up for success so that when you do dial in and you do decide to focus on a project, you are prepared and you're ready to win. And you have a couple really essential building blocks designed for you so that you can go and execute this project. You can go and execute with excellence. So that's what we're going to be focused on today. If this is your first week, be sure to introduce yourself in the chat. And also, if this is your first month inside of the platform and you're going through all of the monthly and the weekly trainings, be sure to complete your homework. The essential ingredients of this platform is to make sure that you are actually doing the work, and doing the work starts with doing the homework. So we focused on clarity, we focused on goals, we went through action planning and practice. Those were the foundations. This is like the foundational systems. Now we're inside of this Fusion accelerators, and it started with design energy last week. Now we're focused on design clarity because it's about how we're interacting with our teams and moving things forward. And then next week, we'll be focused on design productivity. And to close down for the execution frameworks, we'll be focused on design impact in the following week. So now that we know what we're focused on, let's just go right back into Figma and do a quick recap of where we're currently at. But remember, this week, design clarity is going to start with protecting your team's time and your peace. The more friction that you have in your companies and the more things that you're working through but not really achieving and winning, it's probably because of one of these things. Like, you might not necessarily know what to build, you don't know when to build it or who's going to deliver it by when. You need to be able to understand how the work gets done and the results of it, right? Flow, not friction, working together as one team, working towards milestones, and then, of course, working through those priorities. So let's zoom out and then zoom all the way up of where we started. When we first started our path for next level UX, we start with the big six. These are the six core identifiers of trying to help build more emotional awareness and more clarity about your internal operating system. So, what is your purpose? What are your priorities? Where are the opportunities that lie in the efforts that you're doing? How do you want to show up in that moment? What's your identity really look like? And how are we going to interact and move through these projects and through this work? And of course, what does success look like? After we did that definition, we went through and broke them down across different categories. Then we looked at the possibilities of breaking these things down into days, into weeks, into months, just so we have an awareness of what we need to do. Then we looked at schedules and systems, rituals and routines, and the foundation building blocks that are going to allow us to show up and do the work at a high level. Then we scrolled down a little bit more and we focused on goals, right? The clarity effort is so important when you first start getting going, or at least doing a checkpoint of this. If you've never done it before, you want to do it every 3 months or at least every month to be aware of how you're aiming your energy. And for goals, we focus on four key categories just to make sure we're pushing ourselves a little bit further. We focus on career, passion, project, and personal goals. We broke them down in chunks. We looked at how we're going to be moving our energy through the week and how we're going to craft it. We looked at how we might break down needle moving tasks into action planning and taking the five most needle moving actions that you can have for the week. And we broke those down, and then we landed into a practice excellence practice that's going to allow us to actually set up our systems to do the work and to see the improvements and to work through being mindless to mindful, being unaligned to aligned, having friction to having flow. These are the essential ingredients. So we're going to be catapulting you this week and making sure that you do understand these things. But as we keep going through, we did focus on design energy. We looked at how we broke down all the tasks, and we even looked at what this could look like as you age and as you work through. So it's 2026, and what's going to happen in 10 years? How old will you be? What will you be working on? What would be focused in? And how can you document and break those things down so you can actually like start making it a fun practice to get through? We actually did also work on a operating practice where we're looking at the daily rhythms or weekly practices, did a couple graphics for that. And then now that we're back into flow with design clarity, I want to bring it back to the original point and the original practice of why we even started Next Level UX. Now we know that working is very important for our livelihood, where we have to work. Now, if we're going to do the work, why not do it at the highest levels? Why not be the absolute very best of our discipline and what we do? Well, how do we do that? How do we just, if you wake up one day and you want to go from mediocre to excellent, what are you going to do? What's the first step? Well, the first step is it's got to be obvious. It's got to be the most obvious thing so that you do not put yourself in a situation to fail. You don't also, besides putting yourself in a position to fail, you are aligned on how to win. Any sport that you play, you're going to learn the ways to win the game. The fundamentals of the sport, you're going to work through and you're going to go. You're going to get after it. So, what is that in your discipline? How do you do it? How do you break things down and get going? Well, you have to take audit. You have to take an audit. Say it one more time. You have to take an audit. You have to understand not only how your company does things, when your company does things, who is going to be doing the work, what problems are you going to be solving, what success looks like. You break down those things, you audit those things, you study those things. That's the first step. Now, I got this graphic up on screen because from a design clarity perspective, we have to start building on top of the systems and frameworks we have already studied and started practicing and building for ourselves, right? You are building compound amplifiers as you step into these disciplines and these understandings. The same thing with your AIs that you use and the tools in Codex and Claude and Bolt and all the other tools that you use. You want to build off of what you built on the previous week. You don't want to have to start from scratch week over week over week. You want to build and compound the actions and things that you're doing. So, where do we start? We start with this framework: people, tools, and systems. If you drew this on a block, and we did this in the very first week, so you can go back to the training and watch it and draw out yours to understand this. But people, tools, systems. What people are you interacting with? What tools are you interacting with? What systems are you interacting with? Right? How are the processes connecting between the people and the systems? How are the tools being directed with the systems? And then how do you give feedback asynchronously and continuously with people and with tools? Now, once you understand these things, there are outlying frameworks, right? Outside of this, we have systems thinking, product thinking, design thinking, life thinking. We have the ability to stay motivated and disciplined for the things that we're doing. When we lock into it, when we say we're going to do something, we do it. How we bring ambition, aim, attention, and affecting something, making something happen. And then the expectancy of something, like what is the expectations? What is the esteem behind the things that we're deciding to do? And what is the learning efficacy of, okay, now that you know the system exists and you know how it works, how are you going to operate inside this new framework and this new level? So you have that, and that's really important. You can score this in the platform if you go to the profile page, if you've already scored, and this is where you do your benchmarks and you start working and improving these scores every week or every month, every year. But you have them now. You know that they exist. But the thing that we have to start layering in underneath is the efficiency of all the people and the processes that come into play. So at first glance, this might be like, wow, I don't know how. Let me move it right there. Perfect. I don't know how I'm going to start on this. Well, if you just start with two circles, draw two circles side by side and write in inside people and write in processes. Now, I've already given you an example of different roles and responsibilities right around here, like business, friends, engineering, family, design, products, yes, content, mentors, and coaches, and marketing. And you see these people. These are your people. You got to support these people. You're a leader. You're a champion. You're going to support people, or they are not going to feel the love, the support, the connective tissue of building something from start to finish and seeing that flow of really truly what we're trying to get to, design clarity, right? Because design clarity is about how all of your operating units, all of your people, all of your team are able to, in parallel, work together in harmony, in flow, do their best work, stay in their lanes, accomplish great things. And there's going to be times where there's overlap of people and tools and processes and things, but you got to have an audit and you got to understand the frameworks in the beginning stages so that you can be set up for success. So start doing the audit. Who are the people, the teams, the connections that you have? Write them in. Then on the processy side, we have to go another level. This is going to get a little bit more complex because every process that you work through in every team, they're going to have different plans. You're going to have different levels of craftsmanship and how people get things done and how they work. You're going to have different levels of knowledge transferring. Knowledge transferring is just that ability to, you have an information or a nugget or insight, and you need to be able to pass that torch to somebody on your team so that they can be set up for success. How do you do that? There's also the level of collaboration, communication, and clarity that you are responsible for the processes that you have in place. Now, there's so many examples of this, like you could think about anything, any discipline. If you're a farmer, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a tech mongol, whatever you do for a living, if you're an operator and you're trying to build something, you're going to have different levels of these things on the right: clarity, communication, collaboration, knowledge transfer. But the core idea is that you audit and understand what that operating bar is in your company and your team, and think about how you're going to raise it. You're going to go from this level to this level, 3 levels up. What does that look like? It's being more prepared, it's being more ready to take action, it's knowing what the recipes are to win, it's knowing how to do the research and preparation to help your team succeed in these meetings or in these kickoffs or in these presentations or in these project deliverables. You're setting yourself up for success. You got to be able to understand the playing field, right? So now that you understand the playing field, there's gonna be so many different content intake, out and output every single week. So you're not the only person at the company that's creating something, right? So as things come in, you need to be able to quickly take what's being taken in, and I call that intake. Now, up at the top here, we have our intake visual. And I started with intake because every day, every week, and every month, you'll have different levels of intake. But the key is, if you understand the underlying foundations of the systems that you're building within, then you can start crafting and designing milestone 1, milestone 2, milestone 3, milestone 4, milestone 5. And I do want you to push yourself to have 3 to 5 milestones for your projects, things that are checkpoints to keep you moving forward and moving in a forward direction and to work towards that achievement. If you're a sports team, it could be getting that championship ring. If you're a design team, it could be getting that first design system out. If you're an operator, business owner, it could be getting that first landing page design out. I mean, there's so many examples, and it's fun to create those milestones. But if you never write them down and you never create it, and you never even taken the time, you let somebody else do the work for you, you're going to be missing out on so many opportunities and so many cha- championship moments to win. So let's keep that in mind. As we come through and we're looking through the intake and all the milestones, there's going to be a consistent amount of loops that are happening. We have a team loop, a systems loop. As a leader, you're thinking about things that are happening on a recurring basis with your team. You have constant flow of things coming in. So learn what those are. Learn how those help you or how they disarm you or slow you down. And those certain types of loops are going to have different supporting mechanisms to make them work. And we end up reframing these loops into rituals or routines. A ritual or routine could be something that you set up on Wednesday, a Monday, or Friday that allows you to do something that it benefits every person and every process that you're creating. That way you are having a compound effect to improve this scenario and experience. And then once you do that, now what we're doing is we're thinking about at scale all the projects that we have in our Rolodex. And you could have one, you could have 50, it's up to you. You could have 1 to 10 to 50 actions. Right in here, it's like 25 showing up. You could have different outcomes that you're shooting for. And then as you go through these processes, you're going to be learning new opportunities. And remember that an opportunity comes from identifying problems in your experience or friction. And then once you identify those, then you work through recalibrating and reframing those problems into opportunities that you can decide we're going to invest in these 3 opportunities this upcoming month, and here's how we're going to test them, here's how we're going to validate them, and here's what we're going to do next. Remember, we're creating design clarity. So as you work through these systems and you starting having a really solid understanding, all right, great. We got our foundations, we got our schedules, we got our rituals. That helps us understand. Now we really got to like do the work, like for real. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to draw a couple different visuals. And this visual is going to be able to help me understand how I am going to think about. And I'll like draw some circles, draw a circle. And I'm going to do 3 or 4 circles right now. There we go. You see them? I'm going to put these on outlines and then get some text here coming in. All right. So the first one we're going to do what? What are we building? When you first start a project, remember that just to go be simple about it. Like what the heck is it? How is it going to work? The how is really important too, and it's really fun to figure out. Well, you get to imagine, you get to create prototypes, you get to do all kinds of fun things. Then we need to think about, well, for this project that we're building, remember that we're focused on design clarity right now. I gave you a couple examples above on how you can do that. And then we need to understand who's going to be involved. So we got our who, we got our when, we got our what. And these are all obvious things, right? But you got to be able to ask those questions. And another technique that we would do in design world is called 5 whys. You would ask why 5 times to break it down and then go through this. So if we're trying to create immense design clarity for our projects, we got to start asking thoughtful questions. What are we building? How does it work? Who's going to be using it or who's going to be building it? When are we expecting it? Some very standard questions. And if you walk into your weekly projects or you walk into your PM meetings or you walk into a team call and you are working on a project where you are being paid to execute. You're getting paid to move the project forward. You're not being paid to sit on your butt and to wait for somebody to give you orders. You need to participate and to collaborate and to facilitate the movement of this big rock that you might be focused on. So if you're thinking like, well, wow, I got this huge rock. And if I'm this little tiny speck, this little person, and I got to move this big giant rock, it's definitely going to be a lot easier if you can get your 10 teammates. Let's just see here. It's definitely going to be easier to get your 10 teammates to help you move this rock versus trying to move this rock all by yourself, right? You get the idea. So we got these basic foundations. But like I was showing you earlier, now we have a couple other boxes that are going to be really helpful for you. Like I was saying earlier, we have direction. How are you directing? Directing is not only directing people, it's directing yourself. How are you giving feedback? Not just feedback for your product, but feedback for how you collaborate. You just had a meeting, it didn't go so well. People were a little unorganized, not aligned. Why didn't we just talk about it and put it all on paper and talk about what the problem is that we're trying to solve and show it and present it and show the research and do have the conversation. The other thing that besides direction and feedback is we also have process, like we were talking about other. So, I mean, I gave you one way to look at it up here. This is just one way to look at it in a flow and like a kind of a growth loops style. Now we're actually thinking about this index. And if I was to make these, let's just make these like a gold. And I'm going to group it, group it, group it. So now, as we're going through, there's going to be processes for each one of these things that might end up overlapping with people, and we want to be able to do that. We also might have feedback, and we're creating little chains here. And then alongside of each of these, there could very well be new direction that we have to keep going through and keep working. So I I want you to see this because there's always going to be overlap and with your team and the way that you're creating and the things that you're going to be building. But the people who are going to win, the high performing designers that are going to win and the creators that are going to win are going to be the ones that can hold the connective tissue between the teams together, and the ones that are going to be showing up in a confident way to navigate the complexity of a project so that you can go in and you can build some incredible things. And this is going to help you dramatically when you're working through big projects. So what else is that like, or how else could that look? So like come back here, I'm going to open my sidebar, I'm going to come over to my training flow, and I was showing you this diagram, and I showed you this a couple weeks ago too, where if you're thinking about your flow, this is yourself, you're doing this, but think about if you layer in 3 to 5 people or even 10 to 50 people or 100 to 200 people and you're managing them, you have to be able to align the team of what you're working on and move it through the funnel, move it through the project. That also comes into how do you ask questions? What questions do you ask and how thoughtful can you be? Ask yourself and work through your own questions. Work through those based on your discipline, on your company, on your industry. And then once you have those prepared and ready to go on your industry and what you're doing, then you can start building out a higher level of maturity for how you work through your quarterly battle board or your annual battle board. If we're currently in June, so we have January, February, March, April, May, June, we're in M6. And let's just say, I'm going to call this June, June opportunities. So if we have June opportunities, how do we get to a point where we can have incredible design clarity for the month of June? Now, you know very well that the success of this month of June was designed and crafted 3 months prior. So, if we think about that, the success of how I'm showing up right now is a byproduct of how I design my days, my weeks, and months with my team for my family, how I'm designing and working through those things. So, let me give you a couple examples. So, if we knew, let's move the table, so we know these are all the ones that I removed. These are months that have already come and gone. All right. So we got, it's currently M6. We've worked through 6 months of effort already almost this year. January, February, March, April, May, June. And now we're halfway through the year. We're ready to tackle this next thing. So if it's already Q2, about to finish the second half or the first half of the year, what are the top things this month that I know that I need to do in order to win? So, for example, I have pitches for my operator pitches. So these are companies that I'm trying to work with. I have family yard slash compound, or I'll just say homestead. We're growing, we're building a sauna, we're building trails in the forest and just executing and doing that. And then it's training, summer training. And I would also say adventure. These are things that are happening this month. This is a great focus for us this month. top three priorities. What are the top three priorities that we could work through? Now, I hope you're actually thinking about yours as well. So, a top priority would be design clarity for end products, because I'm working with a lot of founders and I'm trying to help them with their products. So, that's going to be huge this month. We're launching a couple of them too. Then there's going to be the preparation for the following week, which will also be the other two designs. So, design impact and productivity. So, these will be the next 2 weeks. And then the other one that I got going on is we are also planting fruit trees. So, I need to dig the place for the fruit trees, right? Pretty cool stuff. Working through those projects. If I know what my top things are already for this week or this month, this second half of the year, great. Now that I know this, what are the things that I can do to help backwards plan and successfully architect what am I going to do for all this project? So now what I'll do, and I'll do this privately, is I'll have like a card, like for example, like a card like this. I'll take a card and I'll write at the top of it, project, the project name. I'll put the project, write down the name, and then I'll write down, I'll do five triangles, and then I'll write down the five things that I can do for that specific project to be set up for success. So for these launches, there's social, there's the growth levers, there's the design libraries. Just to give you an example, I'm doing design libraries, I'm doing social the growth levers for the businesses, I'm finishing the websites, marketing, planting. I mean, just like all the stuff that you got, and you just write it down and then you have a list and you can just put that in front of you and you can work through that list. It's so simple and so obvious, but a lot of people don't plan, they don't architect. So when you go in and you're thinking about, well, okay, for this week, this month, this project, how am I showing up in my ability to understand what am I building, why am I building it, when is it coming, who's helping execute it, is it on the timeline, is it on a schedule, is there a ritual or routine set up for me to be able to do it through the week and for me to be able to put the time in to do it throughout the week, and how am I setting myself up to be able to do that work, because it's fun and it's exciting and it helps you build the momentum. And at Next Level UX, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help you build the momentum, build better flow, be a better operator, learn the ins and the outs of a creatorship capability. You could be an entrepreneur, you could be a leader in your company, but what you're going to be doing is learning better systems here. So as you go through and you accomplish your, like, literally the rest of this month, think about how you can level up your design clarity for any of the projects that you're working on. So just ask these questions, go back through this training and come back over into the the systems and think about what you're doing right now for your products and how much overlap do you have. I want you to come back in and think about for your projects and your actions and your outcomes. Are you writing them down and are you putting them at a high enough level where you're going to be able to win and be able to focus on some of those details, like just mapping out your team is a great start. Mapping up your team and their problems and friction is an even better action that you can take. You could literally just email them at the end of the day today and just be like, hey team, looking forward to this second half of the year. I'm looking for 3 to 4 opportunities or friction that you have in your role or in the last couple projects that we've worked on. I'm really trying to improve for this next month ahead. What are some things that you wish were different or things that we would continue doing? You document that, you write that out, and now you can consolidate all that feedback and start working towards improvements on a daily, weekly, monthly basis with your team. Now, you're going to hear me quite a bit, and I'm going to tell you, like, I in my trainings have gone back and structured things to be thinking as designed as daily actions, weekly actions, and monthly actions. You can't do everything all the time, but if you can decide what you will tolerate and what you will motivate, what you will move on, you'll be far better set up for success because you're making the decision. I do these things every day. I do these things every week. I do these things every month. Build in those operations, work backwards from these big giant goals, and keep moving things forward. Now, some of the most exciting work that I've ever done were these big giant projects. And you know what didn't hold me back was the complexity of these projects because I could map it, I could understand it, and I was gonna go hunt it and go work through it. So make sure you leverage your capabilities of what you already see around you, document it and structure it, and then go get into it. And then come back and score yourself in the platform to make sure that you can actually do this. So let me actually head over into the platform right now. So as you go through and you do this assessment, I'm going to skip it because I've already completed it. I'm going to come in. This is my current score. I got a 54 out of 60. I'm a leader. You're operating at a high level, continue learning. We have our different areas of people and tools and systems. So you can work through these areas, right? Remember that you can come back through and hover over people, tools, and systems just to learn a little bit more about these categories and how you can start thinking about how do you measure these things? Where would you score if you were to try to do it today? And then when you come back through, it's always going to be stored in your profile. So if you go to profile, you'll be able to see that. And then you can just scroll down and see like your battle board and different things that you've been focused on and working on. Now I'm going to come back to the dashboard because we were training today on the last week on design energy, and then today's the design clarity workshop, which is what we're in right now. So as you come back in, we'll always have the replays up very quickly and soon, and you can always just come back in and join us. And a couple things that I wanted to leave you with today as you're deciding on how to use the platform, how to get better clarity and project efforts out there. Now we do have a learning experience, which you can come back in and do the learning experience. We have hooked up on the right side. Let me just move myself over a little bit. There we go. Hello. So we did move the tooltips a little bit more on the right side. So that's been updated. So you can come in and quickly go to the homework and for any of the sections. If you come over into the design clarity, I'll have the replay up. But if you start the homework and start thinking about, the flow of your pain points and the things that you work through, the top 10 improvement areas that you maybe document from your team. Think about the top 10 actions that you want to commit to. And if you don't know what to write in here, you can you can just literally use my pro version over here and just ask questions about what you should be doing, and just make sure you do have a plan so that you can get after it and use that experience. And for the planning side, I even wanted to remind you that you can use the planning tool, bring myself back over, to help you prepare for these other needle moving actions. So, for example, today's weekly show is about design clarity. We prepared for it. We did like a little hike before we got into this in the studio. We are talking about the topics and how important it is to build alignment with your team. Your team has talent. Your team is ready, but your team might not just have that alignment or stickiness between you and your staff. So that's something you can build. And we focus on the what, the when, the how, and the who, and the people, and the process. And we looked at the tools, people, and system. Very simple framework. But this is how you can use the tool. You can put any of these frameworks in here and any of your big projects and just work through the list. We had our live sessions. And remember that you can always come up here and hit the AI growth recommendations, and it's going to give you recommendations on your plan to improve. So if I was focused on this design clarity session, it's asking me to prioritize and schedule task completion. Okay. Initiate the training list, daily review and reflect, leverage existing strengths, and establish a vision for the design clarity. This is great. This is great home. This one's actually pretty awesome. I'm going to add that. And then there are different topics too based on what you select. So now we know what those are. They're going to show up on our dashboard over here. And then these are things that we're going to need to kind of work through. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you got a lot out of today's session. Remember that you can go and use plans, you can use the journal. And of course, if you're interested in supporting and wearing a little bit of the pride of Next Level UX as some merch, you can go ahead and get some of your merch here on the site. That really had fun designing those and having them ready. And then also, if you do want to check out some of the tunes that we've created in the past, and you can do some journaling and some journaling reflection based on some of the topics and the things that we have. Thank you so much for attending the session. Design clarity is near and dear to my heart because it's helped me produce so many incredible products and solutions, but also not only do that, but give peace and mind and harmony to the teams that I work with because nothing is better than an efficient and effective team. Nothing is better than making sure you roll up your sleeves and you have problems that you're trying to solve, and then you can work with your team to be able to go solve those problems because you're aligned. You know how you're going to win. You can pull out the best of each person's abilities and skills and go and work on those things. So I really hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you so much for being a part of Next Level UX. And we're going to be back again next week for a session on design productivity. And design productivity is one of those things that, you know how to align the team, but now you got to be effective and efficient and be a world-class executor and be super fast and efficient with what you do. We've already talked a little about this in the past, but we're going to keep the momentum going. So other than that, I wish you a very beautiful rest of your day. I'll see you next week. All right, later.